With a whopping $505 billion market cap, ExxonMobil stands tall as the 16th largest company in the world, and let's be honest, one of the reigning champs of the oil industry. But behind all those shiny numbers, there's a not-so-glamorous story of an entire country footing the bill for this corporate giant's success. Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up for the wild ride that's the story of ExxonMobil. The story of ExxonMobil began in the 1870s with John D. Rockefeller and his partners shaking up the oil industry by founding Standard Oil Company. Rockefeller entered the oil business in 1863, shortly after the oil rush began in northern PA in 1859. During this time, he encountered a chaotic and fiercely competitive environment with little government regulation. New oil fields were constantly being discovered and depleted, causing volatile oil prices that left investors and operators struggling. Each aspect of the oil industry, refining, transportation, production, and marketing, was its own unpredictable battleground. In response to this chaos, Rockefeller sought to bring order. From the 1860s through the end of the century, he methodically organized the oil industry, establishing principles that would make Standard Oil a dominant force. This success was achieved through savvy political maneuvers and a ruthless business strategy. By 1878, Standard Oil controlled an astonishing 95% of the U.S. oil refining capacity. Their strategy was straightforward and brutally effective: buy out the competition or crush them. Refineries viewed as potential rivals were faced with a stark ultimatum: either join Standard Oil or be driven out of business. This ruthless strategy triggered widespread public fury, as small businesses were systematically crushed and consumers were at the mercy of a single company controlling a vital commodity. The press depicted Rockefeller as a monstrous octopus, with tentacles strangling the American economy, and the same Standard Oil became synonymous with corporate greed and unchecked power. As public outrage grew, politicians began to take action. Investigative committees were formed, and demands for regulations intensified. State legislatures in Ohio and New York initiated legal battles against Standard Oil, reflecting the mounting pressure to rein in its dominance. By 1889, Standard Oil's business practices came under severe scrutiny when company officials were indicted for violating state anti-monopoly laws. Although Standard Oil avoided conviction, this event marked the beginning of several efforts to limit its power. In 1882, Standard Oil established the first ever trust designed to circumvent Ohio laws that restricted ownership of out-of-state companies. This maneuver set a precedent for corporate strategy, but also intensified calls for regulation. The Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890 was largely a response to Standard Oil's monopolistic practices, aiming to curb the immense power it wielded. However, it was in 1911 that the final blow came, when the U.S. Supreme Court ordered the breakup of Standard Oil into 34 separate companies. After the 1911 breakup, Standard Oil continued to operate through its New Jersey subsidiary, Jersey Standard. It retained the Standard Oil name in much of the eastern U.S. In the 30s, Jersey Standard expanded significantly by acquiring Humble Oil, establishing itself as a dominant player on the global oil stage. But despite its success, the company faced branding challenges because it didn't own the exclusive rights to the Standard Oil name nationwide. To unify its operations and branding, Jersey Standard decided to consolidate its various brands, Esso, Enco, and Humble, under a single name. And guess what? Standard Oil New Jersey became Exxon Corporation, and Humble Oil became Exxon Company USA. This change followed successful testing of the Exxon name, chosen from many options. The new logo, a rectangular design with red letters and blue trim on a white background, was created by Raymond Loewy. It featured interlinked X's in red, representing a fresh start for the company. In 1998, Exxon and Mobil, another subsidiary of Standard Oil, decided to join forces, forming ExxonMobil through a merger. This merger was finalized on November 30th, 1999. They made this move because they were facing challenges like falling oil prices and tough competition from state-owned companies like Pemex and Aramco. By merging, Exxon and Mobil aimed to combine their resources, become more competitive globally, and better handle the ups and downs of the world economy. The Exxon-Mobil merger was not only significant for its size, but also for its impact on the energy industry. At the time, Exxon was the world's largest energy company, while Mobil held the title of the second largest oil and gas company in the U.S. The announcement of their merger came shortly after the BP-Amoco merger, which was the largest industrial merger at the time. In the deal, Exxon formally acquired Mobil. Mobil shareholders received 1.32 shares of Exxon for each share of Mobil they owned. This resulted in former Mobil shareholders holding approximately 30% of the merged company, while former Exxon shareholders held about 70%. Lee Raymond, the head of Exxon, retained his position as chairman and chief executive of the newly formed company, while Lucio Noto, the CEO of Mobil, assumed the role of vice chairman. What made the ExxonMobil merger especially noteworthy in American history was that it brought together the two largest companies of the Standardized Oil Trust, marking a significant reunion in the industry's landscape. Today, ExxonMobil is one of the world's largest and most powerful companies. Since its merger, the company's fluctuated between being the first to the 10th largest publicly traded company by revenue and holds one of the largest market capitalizations globally. As of 2023, in the most recent rankings released in the Fortune 500, ExxonMobil was ranked 3rd and 12th on the Fortune Global 500. It's the largest investor-owned oil company in the world, the largest oil company headquartered in the Western world, and the largest of the big oil companies in both production and market value. Its reserves were 20 billion barrels of oil equivalent at the end of 2016, and the 2007 rates of production were expected to last more than 14 years. With 21 oil refineries constituting a combined daily refining capacity of 4.9 million barrels, 780,000 cubic meters, ExxonMobil is the second largest oil refiner in the world, trailing only Sinopec. Approximately 55.56% of the company's shares are held by institutions. The largest of 2019 were the Vanguard Group, BlackRock, and State Street Corporation. To maintain its dominance in the oil market, ExxonMobil didn't merely inherit Standard Oil's legacy of aggressive expansion and global ambition. If anything, it took it to the next level. The company invested heavily in research and development, sought out new technologies for oil exploration and refining of oil. This focus on innovation gave the company a competitive edge in assessing new sources of oil to meet the world's ever-growing demand. One region that became particularly critical to Exxon's global dominance was Venezuela. However, that dominance didn't last long because in 2007, the company was kicked out of the country. You see, ExxonMobil's involvement in Venezuela began in the 1940s when it started operations there. During this period, Venezuela was very open to foreign investments in its oil sector, and ExxonMobil, known as Standard Oil in New Jersey at that time, was one of the many international oil companies that entered the Venezuelan market to explore and produce oil. The oil industry in Venezuela was nationalized in 1976, but foreign companies continued to play a role through various operating agreements. In the 90s, Venezuela opened up its oil industry once again to foreign investment under the Apertura Petroleum policy, which allowed foreign oil companies to enter into strategic partnerships and operate in the country under certain conditions. ExxonMobil, along with other major oil companies, took advantage of this policy to invest and develop several heavy crude oil projects in the Orinoco Belt, which is one of the largest reserves of crude oil in the world. The period of cooperation lasted until the early 2000s, when the political climate shifted, and the Venezuelan government under Hugo Chavez moved towards nationalization, which eventually led to the termination of ExxonMobil's operations in Venezuela. After getting kicked out of Venezuela, Exxon knew they had to act quickly to secure another source of oil, and luckily for them, their answer was just around the corner, literally. They turned to Guyana, a country that shared borders with Venezuela, with the hopes of striking black gold, and lucky for them, black gold they found. ExxonMobil initiated oil and gas exploration activities in Guyana in 2008, which led to the drilling of the Liza-1 well in 2015, marking the company's first significant oil find offshore Guyana. This discovery promised to change Guyana forever, catapulting the country and its people to new heights of power and wealth. At the time, oil already generated $1 billion US in revenues annually for the government and was projected to produce an estimated $7.5 billion by 2040. By these forecasts, Guyana, which was an impoverished, rainforest-covered country of just 800,000 people, would become the 4th largest offshore oil producer in the world. Sure, ExxonMobil's operations in Guyana have definitely led to substantial investments in the local economy. For instance, with projects like the Whiptail development, ExxonMobil is expected to add approximately 250,000 barrels of daily capacity by the end of 2027. These and other projects are part of a $12.7 billion investment anticipated to generate tens of billions of dollars in revenue for Guyana. However, while an abundance of oil can spark significant economic growth, it can also leave countries worse off with weaker economies and democracies. Economists call this phenomenon the resource curse, and it afflicts many countries throughout Latin America, and Guyana is no exception. ExxonMobil's involvement in Guyana has brought significant positive impacts, especially following the discovery of vast offshore oil reserves. One of the most notable benefits has been the tremendous boost to Guyana's economy. The country, once heavily reliant on agriculture and mining, has seen its GDP skyrocket from just $4 billion to over $14 billion in less than 10 years due to oil revenues. The employment landscape in Guyana has also been positively affected. ExxonMobil's operations have generated thousands of jobs, both directly within the oil and gas sector and indirectly through related industries. This surge in employment opportunities has not only reduced unemployment, but has also improved the skill levels within the workforce. ExxonMobil has been proactive in this regard, implementing numerous education and training programs. As impressive as this sounds, things aren't always as they seem, and like the saying goes, not all that glitters is gold. Unfortunately for Guyana, this was one of those cases. While economically promising, ExxonMobil's operations in Guyana have introduced several negative impacts that significantly affect the local population. One of the primary concerns is environmental degradation. The extraction and processing of oil carry the risk of oil spills and pollution, which can devastate marine ecosystems. Many local communities depend on these ecosystems for their livelihoods, particularly through fishing. Contaminated habitats can lead to the collapse of local fisheries, reducing food security and income for countless families. But beyond that, the destruction of natural habitats affects wildlife and disrupts the balance of the ecosystem, impacting agriculture and other land-based resources that rural communities rely on. Experts have also criticized Exxon for what they see as inadequate preparation for potential disasters, such as a deepwater blowout and major oil spill. They argue that Exxon's safety plans are insufficient, putting workers' lives, public health, and Guyana's oceans and fisheries at risk. The environmental impact of the operations is also a major concern, with projections indicating the release of 125 million metric tons of carbon dioxide per year from 2025 through 2040, equivalent to the emissions of 15 large coal-fired power plants. Among the several controversies involving ExxonMobil, the oil spill cleanup from Hess and China National Offshore Corporation's offshore oil drilling project in Guyana has taken center stage. A lower court ruling sharply criticized ExxonMobil and the Guyana Environmental Protection Agency for lax enforcement of permit provisions that were meant to protect Guyana in the event of an oil spill. The ruling made it clear that ExxonMobil would be responsible for the cost of the cleanup. However, an appeals court ordered that ExxonMobil post a $2 billion bond and has shifted the rest of the liability for any potential oil spill back onto the people of Guyana. But apart from potential environmental impacts, the benefits of oil extraction have not been evenly distributed, leading to increased disparities. While the government and ExxonMobil reap significant financial rewards, many ordinary citizens see little improvement in their daily lives. Wealth generated from the oil sector often fails to trickle down to improved public services or infrastructure that benefits the wider population. Additionally, the influx of oil revenue can lead to inflation, raising the cost of living. This economic phenomenon, known as the resource curse or Dutch disease, makes essential goods and services more expensive, further straining the finances of local residents who do not directly benefit from the oil industry. The social fabric of Guyana is also under strain due to the oil boom. Communities, particularly indigenous and rural populations, face displacement as land is repurposed for oil exploration and infrastructure. This displacement severs the connection to traditional lands and resources, leading to loss of culture or identity. Moreover, perceived inequality in the distribution of oil and wealth can fuel social unrest. Protests and conflicts may arise and communities demand a fair share of the benefits, highlighting the tension between promises of economic growth and the realities of local disenfranchisement. Health risks associated with oil extraction are another critical issue. Pollution from oil operations can lead to air and water contamination, resulting in a range of health problems for local populations, including respiratory issues, skin conditions, and other chronic illnesses. Industrial accidents, which are not uncommon in the oil sector, can have immediate and severe health impacts on workers in nearby communities. Guyana's health infrastructure, already under pressure, may struggle to cope with increased demand for medical care resulting from these issues. Governance and corruption present further challenges. Guyana's regulatory framework for managing its oil resources is still developing, leading to inadequate oversight on ExxonMobil's operations. This regulatory weakness can result in compromised environmental and social standards. Additionally, large sums of money flowing from the oil industry can exacerbate corruption. Government officials might prioritize personal gain over public welfare, undermining trust in public institutions and limiting the positive impacts of oil revenues on national development. Finally, Guyana risks become overly dependent on oil, neglecting other sectors of the economy. This over-reliance can make the country vulnerable to fluctuations in global oil prices, leading to economic instability. If oil prices fall, the economy could suffer severe downturns, affecting public finances and leading to cuts in social spending. As history's taught us, diversification of the economy is crucial to mitigate this risk, but from the look of things, the allure of immediate oil revenues can overshadow the need for a long-term economic plan. In the end, all we can do is sit back and hope that things turn out well for Exxon, and especially for Guyana, because if we're being honest, it can turn out very good for the country. But on the flip side, it can also turn out very bad.